Charles Leclerc finally breaks his Monaco curse after claiming victory in the Monaco Grand Prix. However, the big talking point is not Leclerc. It is a first lap free car pile-up, which is one of the biggest we have seen in modern F1 at Monaco. From RacingNews365.com, my name is Nick Golding and I'm joined as always by lead editor Ian Parks. Ian, it feels wrong not starting with Leclerc and his incredible weekend, but we need to begin with lap 1 and the free car pile-up up Beau Rivage involving both Haas drivers and Sergio Perez. It led to an immediate red flag, a 50-minute delay. It was arguably one of the biggest crashes we've seen under the current regulations and one of the biggest we've seen at Monaco in modern F1 history.
Yeah, you have to, just to give you a bit of context, we here in the media probably see no more than you guys do initially with regards to crashes like that. We're watching it on a TV screen. Obviously, you can't monitor every corner of a Grand Prix track like you can, watch a football game for argument's sake. So when we first saw the image of Sergio Perez's car that was pretty much missing all four wheels and its front wing, the oohs and ahs and wows that went up from the media inside the media centre was quite something, to be honest. It was like, what on earth has happened there? And then when you saw the replays, you got to appreciate just how serious a crash that was and just how thankful everybody can be for modern F1 safety that none of the three drivers involved, in particular Checo, given the state of his car, was injured in any way, shape or form. Checo said, speaking to him in the pen afterwards, that he felt okay, he'd been checked over at the medical centre, but obviously it might take 2 or 3 days for any effects of that crash to eventually come to the fore, should we say. But yeah, just quite astonishing. So we can get into the whys and wherefores right now, Nick. I'm sure you got plenty of questions lined up about it.
Well, of course, you hit the nail on the head. The most important thing is that somehow nobody was injured. Everybody walked away after what was an absolutely massive crash. A lot of people were quite quick to pin the blame on Kevin Magnussen. However, the stewards judged no further action. In my opinion, I actually think it was a racing incident. But what did you make of it all? Because I think the key for a lot of people after seeing the replays was Sergio Perez's onboard and the fact you could see him looking in his right mirror at Kevin Magnussen.
I can imagine, I did actually ask the FIA as to why in this instance no investigation took place. Obviously, there are many instances in the past where the stewards pretty much say no further action with regard to first lap crashes. This, however, is Monaco. It's very different. The walls are close, and you only have to look at the carnage of what took place, the damage caused to those cars, the millions of pounds, dollars, euros worth of damage caused to those cars, and what's going to be required with regard to repairs. Probably not even repairs in Red Bull's case. It's probably going to be a completely new chassis for Sergio Perez in the next race in Canada. And I did think, well, why was there no further action in this instance? And I can imagine you've only got to hear the comments of Kevin Magnussen and Sergio Perez afterwards. And the stewards probably looked at that and thought, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And to use the vernacular of the stewards in many post-race documents that they have issued with regard to similar incidents, that no driver was wholly or predominantly to blame. Just to give you viewers a flavour of the comments of Checo and Kevin Magnussen. Kevin said that Checo left him no room and he was pushed into the wall. Checo turned around and basically said that Kevin was a dangerous driver and he was very surprised that the stewards decided not to investigate the incident any further, i.e. waiting until after the race to listen to the views of both drivers. So, as I say, it's one of those, and you can kind of appreciate in some instances as to why the stewards decided to take no further action. It's the usual first lap incident kind of scenario. I poignantly and pertinently, Sergio Perez was asked, do you feel the stewards had it in their minds that if they did look deeper into this and they'd found Kevin Magnussen guilty, that would automatically have triggered this one race ban that he has hanging over his head because he's on 10 penalty points out of 12, and Kevin Magnussen has to get through the rest of this season without incident to start clearing points off that super license for the start of next season. Checo refused to be drawn into that. So you can kind of read into that what you will, but it was almost like, well, maybe that was in the back of their minds type comment. So, as I say, 6 of one, half a dozen the other. The stewards let it lie, and Kevin escapes another day.
And of course, the big thing for Haas in particular is that arguably this has been their worst weekend in their F1 history. Of course, both cars disqualified from qualifying yesterday, and then both cars out within the first 20 seconds today. And now they've got the huge repair bill, which of course in the cost cap era is going to be a big problem for Haas, who obviously are not the most well-funded team on the grid anyways. How big an issue could this be for Haas in particular going forwards?
With regard to the damage today?
The damage and the fact that this is, the likes of, for example, Alex Albon scored points for Williams, Pierre Gasly scored points for Alpine, Yuki Tsunoda got points for RB. We speak about how close the bottom 5 teams are in terms of the damage, but also the damage both in terms of the cars, but also the fact that the teams below them are starting to pick up some points now.
Well, the damage was effectively, when you think about it, the damage was effectively caused yesterday by the fact that they had this judgment made against them that meant their rear wings were both illegal by the smallest of margins. But as we discussed post-qualifying in our F1 update there, these are the technical rules. There is no black and white. You have to comply with them. Speaking to Ayao Komatsu, the Haas team principal, on Sunday morning, who very courteously decided to front up to the media to explain exactly what had happened. It was just a simple case that this was a new rear wing on the backs of those Haases, and between the design office and the technical team, those that legally inspect the cars to ensure that every single inch of that car is complying with the regulations, there was a breakdown in communication. So just one of those things from Haas. They live, they learn, they move on. Under AL, it's a very different organization compared to Gunther. The communication between the departments he has ensured is at its optimum going forward. This today, this yesterday post-qualifying Saturday, was a breakdown in that communication. Obviously, he's not happy about it. And it's, as I say, this is one of those lessons learned. So the damage was effectively caused by them then having to start at the back of the grid, 19th and 20th, compared to the 12th and 15th. So obviously then, if they'd have started in 12th and 15th, they wouldn't have been involved in an incident with Checo Perez, but that was a circumstance in which they found themselves. And obviously, Kevin Magnussen in particular found himself. Nico Hulkenberg was an unfortunate casualty of the collision between the two of them. He had nowhere to go. So in terms of the actual monetary damage, massive. In terms of the impact going forward for races beyond this, Haas for me is still in a very good position. They've started to considerably improve their performance on the back of considerably improving that car. They've made a good, strong start to this campaign. Nico Hulkenberg obviously scoring the majority of the points for the team. So I don't think they've too much to be concerned about at this particular point. Yes, it was a great step forward for Williams, great qualifying from Alex Albon, and again, another great performance from Yuki Tsunoda for RB. So those two teams, certainly at this circuit, have made a reasonable step forward.
Might as well run through the top 10 quickly. Obviously, it was Charles Leclerc who won with Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz in second and third, Lando Norris in fourth, George Russell in fifth, Verstappen and Hamilton in sixth and seventh. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, Yuki Tsunoda in eighth, Alex Albon in ninth, and Pierre Gasly in P10. Now, quite interestingly, a few seconds before the red flag on the first lap, there was another quite heated incident, which there's been obviously a lot of follow up from after the Grand Prix, with Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly at Portier, which for those who are unaware with the corners at Monaco is the corner before they enter the tunnel. Now, Ocon unfortunately broke the number one rule in any team. Do not
Unwritten rule.
hit.
The
Unwritten rule.
Yeah.
Do not hit your teammate. Not only did Esteban hit his teammate, but Esteban, he went skywards.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you the perspective of Daniel Ricciardo on this one because he had a great view of it from behind. And speaking to Daniel in the pen post-race, he sensed that something was on the cards. He says he saw those two guys touch wheels 3 times in the lead up to that incident at Portier that ultimately resulted in Esteban Ocon retiring. And he saw, to use his phrase, he said they were strong arming one another. It was almost like they were in one of those kind of things where they've got their hands together and they're trying to push the other one down. It was one of those kind of battles, and neither was going to give way. So initially, speaking to Esteban, he didn't offer any apologies. And then the penalty came out for the stewards. And basically, they converted what should have been a 10-second time penalty for the incident, blaming him in very strong language, completely at fault for that incident, converting that 10 seconds time penalty into a 5-place grid drop for the next race in Canada. 7 minutes after that steward's document came out, Esteban Ocon then placed a tweet on X and basically apologizing for what he'd done. We also have to bear in mind that Bruno Famin, the team principal, did a very short interview with Canal Plus whilst the incidents on that first lap were being reviewed during the red flag period. And he was very direct in what he said. He said there would be consequences, that this was an incident that the team would review quickly and take action on quickly. What that means precisely for Esteban Ocon is conjecture. Sky very cleverly managed to grab a shot of Bruno Famin talking with reserve driver Jack Doohan at one stage after that race. And you can link into that what you will, or read into that what you will. Does that mean Jack might get a seat for the Canadian Grand Prix? As I say, it's open to conjecture, but Alpine at the minute and Bruno Famin not expanding on their comments from Bruno that were made to Canal Plus. So we wait to see what the verdict is going to be and what the outcome is going to be for Esteban Ocon going forward, other than right now, a 5-place grid penalty to Canada.
Obviously, for those who are watching this video, let us know your thoughts in the comment section, what you think is going to happen with Esteban Ocon. Now, shall we talk about something positive? Because we spoke about 2 big incidents. Charles Leclerc, he finally broke his Monaco curse, the first Monegasque to win the Monaco Grand Prix since Louis Chiron in 1931. However, Leclerc is the first Monegasque to win the Monaco Grand Prix as part of the F1 World Championship. He was, as expected, very, very emotional. Even said he started to get emotional on the penultimate lap. I mean, it was the beautiful scenes I think we all expected to see for whenever Leclerc was going to win the Monaco Grand Prix.
Yeah, as you say, Nick, he placed that car on pole twice before, and it just never happened. Once, of course, if you remember, he had a crash in qualifying the day before when he clinched pole, and that actual crash allowed him to take that pole position. But of course, what the team didn't know was that there was an issue with that car. And of course, he then broke down on the way to the grid. And then, of course, his second time round, should have really converted that one into that pole position into the race victory. But the team made a mess of strategy on a dry, wet day here in Monaco. And that ultimately cost him that hoped for win. So this was the opportunity for redemption. Third time lucky for him. He's been magnificent all weekend. So, and he delivered when it mattered in qualifying. You know, if you're going to win a race in Monaco, you really have to do it from pole position. His pole position this time was perfect. His race execution and the team's race execution this time around was perfect. Although, of course, that butterfly wing effect again that we always talk about with certain incidents, the red flag playing into Ferrari's hands, basically because they were allowed then to change the tyres during the red flag period. And that then, once they'd done that, allowed them to finish the Grand Prix on that set of tyres. Oscar Piastri in his McLaren did all he could to give Charles a race at the front, but there was never an opportunity for him to pass. Similarly, with Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris behind the lead pair, Carlos, of course, very
lucky boy.
Very lucky, because he had a little brush with Oscar coming out of Saint Devot on the very first corners there. Sustained a puncture, which saw him lock up going into the Casino Square complex, and he dropped to the back of the pack. But because of the way the regulations work when it comes to timings as to grid order then for a restart, what that meant was that the original grid order was the grid order from the restart. So instead of being potentially last or another position, depending on when the timings were taken, the FIA determined that they would start the race from the original grid order. So he again started from third, Carlos Sainz, and he held on to third, despite coming under considerable pressure from Lando Norris at various stages. But for Charles, just a glorious day for him. Thoroughly well deserved. You should have done it before now, as we've just discussed, but quite understandable, the emotions inside him, and why not? For a driver to win at this circuit, bearing in mind he was born and brought up around these streets, in this principality, and brought up around these streets, went to school around here, just the most glorious day that you could possibly imagine.
Well, his childhood dream well and truly came true. The thing that I thought was absolutely amazing about the whole thing is that typically on the podium, before the champagne, we see the Monegasque royal family leave before they're allowed to spray it. On this occasion, Prince Albert not only was given a bottle of champagne, which he sprayed, you then saw him in the background actually drinking from it, and I thought that was just absolutely brilliant. That was the cherry on top. Max Verstappen and Red Bull, obviously, with Sergio Perez, he was obviously out in that horrible first lap incident. Max P6, obviously it's where he started. He said it was boring. He asked for his pillow over the radio, which is quite a funny message. But only 31 points now ahead of Leclerc. Do we have a title fight?
We're sort of quietly, but we potentially do. The reason being is that Red Bull have made no secret of the fact over the course of this weekend that this is a par that they have now not just discovered. It's been a problem that they've aware of, according to Max, since 2022, but their dominance of their previous two cars was such that in many respects it was masked. Coming into this season now, they found themselves under more pressure than they've experienced since these new regulations were introduced at the start of 2022. And the problem with this car, that is a follow-on from last year's, as we all know, is that it's struggling with curb riding. It's struggling with the bumps. And it's just not been able to handle those two factors around Monaco over the course of this weekend. The interesting point going into the next race in Canada is that is a circuit where the curbs come into considerable effect again. Not as significant as here, because it's a street circuit where you've got a curb every 50, 100 meters or so. But with Canada, you have to be able to ride the curbs there because there are significant slow speed sections, interspersed, of course, with those long straights. Now, the track has been resurfaced. It is going to be smooth, we're led to believe anyway. So that is at least one factor that will help Red Bull there. In fact, in that it should be no bumps compared here to Monaco. But how well will that car be able to ride those curbs in between those straight sections? It's going to be a fascinating battle at Canada, but one I know we're going to get into in the build-up to that race in a lot more detail. For now, though, to directly answer your question again, yes, I think we have the makings at the moment of a championship battle, unless Red Bull very quickly manage to get on top of those issues and have that car sailing away at the front again. But for now, Ferrari, McLaren especially, are pushing them really hard. And with 16 Grand Prix to go after this one now in Monaco, let's just look at this and think this could be the start of something now.
Well, it's exciting stuff because it means that we get to see Max get his elbows back out again, which he's not really done since fighting Lewis in 2021. Of course, we will discuss Red Bull more and so much more in Monday's RacingNews365.com podcast. Before myself and Ian go, though, we need to say a massive thank you to you who have been watching, because on Friday, I set out a target for this channel of wanting to hit 4,000 subscribers and 1 million page views. We have smashed both completely out of the park, and that's only because of you guys watching, smashing the like button and subscribing to the channel. So thank you. Please also put in the comment section below any questions you've got for us and also for Sam Coop for the podcast on Monday. We'd love for you guys to get involved more so we can make, an amazing community. Ian, any words on 2 good milestones?
Yeah, just a massive thank you from myself, because when Nick and I started with Racing News 365 back in February, the number of subscribers was only 1.7k. So we've constantly now gone over 4k. So it's onwards and upwards. Thank you ever so much for watching with us, staying with us, and for liking what we do. We're doing our best for you. We're bringing you magnificent sceneries in the background. It's a pleasure.
Ian's yacht.
Yeah, my yacht. It's a pleasure doing these videos with Nick and bringing Racing News 365 all the very best content that we can muster over the course of Grand Prix weekends. So thank you again.
Likewise. For more from RacingNews365.com, like I said, be sure to check out Monday's podcast. From myself and Ian, this has been the Monaco Grand Prix F1 update. We'll see you later.
And as always, take care, folks.